Which is what if Naruto returned as an immortal god and built a godlike harem with Kyuubi, Hinata, Tsunade, Anko, Kurenai, Ino, Tsume, Mei, Yugito, Fu, and Famgara. Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The being who was known in his youth as Naruto Uzumaki was going home. He at this time in his life was 1236 years old, relatively young for an ascended immortal. It all started during the Fourth Great Shinobi War when he attempted to stop Madara Uchiha from using the infinite Tsukuyomi. He had attacked Madara right before the jutsu took effect, and through some ironic twist of fate he had caused a chain reaction that destroyed that universe. Except for him, somehow he had absorbed the blast since he was at the center of it. With that power boost he was transformed into an ascended being. He ended up in the in-between, a space between realities where ascended beings live, most of which are known deities such as Zeus and the like. One of the ascended welcomed him and explained where he was and how he got there, and most importantly what he now was. Naturally he was shocked to learn what had happened, then he almost broke when he learned the cost of his ascension. His whole world, everything and everyone he ever cared about gone, and he'd absorbed all the power from its destruction to ascend. After a month of grieving he decided that he would learn to harness his new abilities so something like this would never happen to him again. He learned that there were infinite clusters of realities, each containing an infinite number of universes, and that as an ascended being he had the power to travel between them. From the explanation he was given, the reality clusters were groups of universes that all had a basic thing in common, such as the cluster he was from being inhabited by ninja, and that each cluster contained a universe for every possibility ever. And each ascended had their own group of realities that were considered theirs. Since he originated from it by rights, his home cluster was his territory. He learned that everyone has a counterpart in every reality cluster and every universe in said cluster, and that when he traveled to those realities, he could either take over his counterpart in that universe, merging with them and gaining all their knowledge, memories and skills, or he could go as himself. So with this in mind he began looking for clusters near his own to take as his territory and learn new abilities and skills from. He found out that most of the other ascended steered clear of the clusters near him, citing them as weird, and calling them anime clusters. Never one to complain about free things, especially since it easily allowed him to seize a few hundred reality clusters for his purpose. As he began his journey through the clusters, determined to become strong enough to protect those he cared about and to never let such a tragedy happen to him again. Through his travels he learned that as long as one of his counterparts remained in the reality cluster he was in, even if he was somehow killed in one universe, he could stay in that cluster, but that universe was then only accessible as himself. Over the next 1,000 years he learned so many things and traveled to dozens of clusters. He fell in love and had families, and thanks to his ascended status he could form bonds with his loved ones that gave them some of his abilities and made them immortal in that universe. Even if that universe collapsed he could call them to a different universe in that cluster, or a new universe in a different cluster. He also learned to split his consciousness between bodies so he could live with all his loved ones simultaneously. But after 1,200 years of training, love and exploration he still hadn't gone back to his home cluster. Finally, he'd worked up the nerve to go back home, but then he had to find a universe as close to his original as possible. It took him 20 years to find one in the infinite expanse of universes, but finally he found one nearly identical. Using his senses he was able to determine that one of the major differences was Kyuubi was female and all of the tailed beasts had a human form, some even preferred their human forms to their beast forms. Just like his original universe, Madara had used his Sharingan to control Kyuubi and make her attack Konoha. Since he knows Kyuubi is female he is assuming her name isn't Kurama. Naruto was planning to take his time and slowly bring down Madara's house of cards right on top of the wannabe ascended. Naruto had chosen to take over his counterpart, which was weird since it was just a younger him. He took over his counterpart on the day of the academy exam. He could have gone back earlier, but he knew that only the final test scores actually counted, and I'm making the exams more thorough where they test everything that you know. So he'd save himself the trouble of having to go through an entire year of the academy. He swam to consciousness in his new body in his apartment in Konoha on the morning of the exam. He looked at the clock and saw it was 5 a.m. He immediately used one of his abilities to put up a time dilatation field around him in the room where 1 minute outside equaled a day inside. He could change the ratio, but seeing as he had a few hours before he had to be at the academy, that was plenty. He centered himself and entered his mindscape to check on Kyuubi. Naruto entered his mind where he did the first time all those years ago in what appeared to be a sewer. Man, no wonder Kurama was so mad. I'd be mad too if I had to live in a sewer for 12 years. Shaking himself from his thoughts he followed his memories and godlike senses to Kyuubi's cage. When he arrived he spotted Kyuubi right away and immediately felt sorry for her. She looked like hell. Her fur was matted and her ribs were showing. He could tell she hadn't been able to move much and she needed a bath. He assumed she was in her fox form for comfort since the cage was bare of the basic amenities. He got closer to the cage. She knew he was there and that she had sensed the immense increase in power he'd gotten when he took over his counterpart. Kyuubi-san, I came to check on you. I recently learned that you were forced to attack Konoha and that it wasn't your fault. I also wanted to tell you that now that I know that I don't blame you for all the abuse the villagers put me through and that I forgive you for what happened to my parents. You were being controlled and it wasn't your fault. He then waited for her response. Naruto had decided for the direct approach as he wanted her to know that he forgave her and that he knew the truth of what happened. It would also go a long way in getting her to believe him when he told her what he was. Before the fight with Madara back in his original universe, he had come to see Kurama as a brother. He wanted to establish a similar relationship with this Kyuubi and a romantic one if she was willing. His ascended senses were screaming at him to make her one of his immortal mates. And since his senses worked off how compatible their souls were for each other, he knew it would be an amazing relationship if she agreed. Basically soul bonds from HP. When established, it lets the bonded see each other's lives and everything about each other, so there are no secrets and they have a telepathic connection. He can form a family bond with non-mates to give them immortality and some abilities, but they won't see everything about each other, just have a sense of undying loyalty to Naruto and Naruto to them. Kyuubi had been shocked when she felt the power her Jinchuriki gained minutes earlier. It was the most power she had ever felt, even stronger than the Rakudo Sennin. Then when he appeared in his mindscape, she got nervous. Did he blame her like she did herself? She knew she deserved it for making him an orphan and killing his mother, who was one of her dearest friends, and his father. Had he come to put her down? She made the choice that she would accept whatever choice he made. If he wanted her dead, she wouldn't fight him. He was stronger than her anyway, and she felt if he did kill her, she would deserve it. So when he said he knew what really happened and that he forgave her, she couldn't take it, and in a puff smoke was in her human form. She had red hair and eyes with a bombshell body, all the right curves in all the right places. D-cup. Red fox ears on her head and 9 red tails with black tips on her lower back just above her butt, and a face that made Naruto's heart skip a beat. She was wearing a black and red kimono that had seen better years. He had had a few dozen wives and lovers over his 1,000 years of exploring, and he loved them all and they were all beautiful, but Kyuubi was easily already one of the most beautiful, and he'd be odd to have her if she'd have him. Immediately after taking her human form for the first time in 12 years, Kyuubi broke down, sobbing her heart out. Naruto rushed to her side, disregarding the cage, and pulled her into a gentle embrace. While he stroked her hair and cooed sweet nothings into her ears to calm her down. He knew she had 12 years of anguish all alone, not able to talk to any due to the tightness of the seal. It's okay, Kyuubi-chan, I know the truth now, and it wasn't your fault. None of it was, and I am so sorry you were alone for 12 years. No one deserves that. Kyuubi sniffed a bit and calmed herself down, then looked Naruto in the eyes and almost gasped at the power and the wisdom she saw there. How can he forgive me so easily? Naruto-kun, how can you forgive a monster like me? Naruto's heart ached when he realized she thought she was a monster. I'm the reason your parents are dead. I'm the reason the villagers hate you. It's all my fault. She tried and failed to choke back another sob and looked down with her hands on his chest. Because Kyuubi-chan, I know you. I know that you see me as your kid and that you loved my mom and dad and that you didn't hate the village, so it wasn't your fault that Madara used his Sharingan on you. Kyuubi-chan, I love you with all my heart. You're not a monster, and I'll show you that. Kyuubi's eyes widened at his words, but before she could fully process them, he gently gripped her chin and lifted her, and gently, with all the care and love he felt for the amazing woman in his arms, he kissed her. Kyuubi had never kissed anyone before. She'd never found anyone worthy enough or available, but as he deepened the kiss, she melted into it. She hadn't talked to anyone in 12 years, let alone touched someone. She was on the brink of insanity. Her only purpose had been to use what power she could to heal Naruto from the abuse the villagers put him through. Naruto, while still holding the kiss, snapped his fingers and instantly his mindscape transformed into a lavish mansion. Kyuubi was cleansed of 12 years of grime and they were in a bedroom fit for a queen. He swiped his tongue across her lips, asking for entrance, which she gladly gave. As their tongues duelled in a sloppy duet, they both moaned and kept the kiss going until they needed air. They parted, panting and red-faced, with a trail of salvia still connecting their tongues. Naruto was the first to recover and spoke in a lust-filled tone. Kyuubi-chan, if it's okay with you, I know a way to bond us together forever as soulmates. We know everything about each other because our souls would be bonded. Kyuubi had a shocked look on her face for a second and then one of contemplation. Should I say yes? I can guess it involves. I've never had anyone worthy enough to sleep with in my life, but I decided earlier that whatever he chooses I'd go with it. I was expecting him to hate me, maybe even kill me. I do love him and I've always wanted someone to spend my life with. Ha ha ha, I guess I've already made up my mind then. She smiled at Naruto. Okay, Naruto-kun, I'll be your soulmate if you'll have me. Naruto beamed at her. You won't regret this, Kyuubi-chan, and I'll be gentle. Naruto started another kiss and then with experienced hands gently groped Kyuubi's through her now brand new kimono and broke the kiss to speak. We'll be together for an eternity, my sweet vixen. I'll never leave your side and I'll make you happy, that I promise, and I never break my promises, that's my ninja way. He then laid her gently on the bed. Kyuubi blushed and shivered in pleasure at his touches and words. She was now sure she wanted this more than anything. She wanted to be Naruto's forever. She then realized she was laying on a soft bed, but before she could question Naruto about it, he moved in again and started kissing and suckling on her neck. She moaned and arched her back in pleasure. Then she felt him gently disrobing her. Naruto slipped the kimono off Kyuubi and then leaned back to get a look at his soon-to-be wife's form. The sight of her perfect form was almost too much for him to handle, and a small trickle of blood worked its way out of his nose, which he quickly wiped away. Kyuubi had never felt so exposed in her life and couldn't fight the blush that colored her face almost cherry red. Naruto, seeing her blush, thought it only made her look cuter. He couldn't help but smile at her. Kyuubi-chan, you're beautiful, more than that, you're a goddess, so don't be embarrassed. Kyuubi blushed more, if that was possible, at his sincere words and gave a hesitant nod. Naruto then snapped his fingers and his clothes disappeared to reveal a tone-sculpted 16-year-old body that was only possible through years of training. He learned early on that his powers as an Ascended automatically rebuilt his body to Ascended standards whenever he took over a counterpart. The process was near instant and meant nigh invulnerability and perfect conditioning. And it was child's play for him to change his physical age and appearance to whatever he wanted. Kyuubi's eyes widened when she saw his body, and instantly she felt her body heat up and her instincts start to kick in. She began running her hands up and down his chest and sides and eyed him with a lust-filled gaze. Naruto-kun, I need you, please make me yours. Naruto grinned and nodded and then began groping her now bare, and quickly locked lips with her in a deep kiss that made her toes curl. After the kiss broke and they were both panting again, he began working his way down, paying tribute to her body along the way with small kisses and licks down her neck and chest. When he got to her, he began licking and suckling her nipples. Kyuubi was in heaven and couldn't help the moans and kitten-like mews that escaped her. When he got to her nipples, she let out a deep moan and arched her back in pleasure. After toying with her a while longer, he began working his way down, kissing, licking and sucking all he could along his journey. When he reached her abdomen and saw her center was soaked, he almost drooled at the sight. He locked eyes with her, silently asking permission. He received a desperate mew and she lifted her lower body closer to him. Please, Naruto-kun. She didn't have to ask twice. He leaned down and began working on her folds with his tongue and fingers. Kyuubi's breath caught in her throat and she moaned loudly. She had never felt anything so amazing. Before long she fell over the edge in a screaming orgasm. Naruto greedily lapped up all her fluids and then crawled up her body to look at her flushed, panting face. Once Kyuubi was calm enough, she spoke, still panting slightly. Naruto-kun, pant, that was amazing. Naruto grinned a foxy grin and decided to tease her. Yeah, you tasted amazing. Then he licked his lips. Kyuubi blushed crimson and looked to the side in embarrassment. You cheeky brat. She turned back to see him smiling slyly at her. She smiled back at him, then she moved in and kissed him gently. She pulled him close and then parted her still slightly trembling legs. I'm ready, please take me. Naruto nodded and positioned himself at her entrance. He gently thrust inside her till he was fully sheathed in her center. He couldn't help the groan of pleasure that escaped him as he felt her tightness around him. Kyuubi had tensed and readied herself for the pain of losing her virginity, but it didn't come. Instead, a wave of warmth spread through her as he thrust fully into her. Another benefit of Naruto's ascended physiology was that his aura could affect those around him if he wanted, including dulling pain and even enhancing pleasure. Before long, Kyuubi had adjusted to him being inside her and wanted more. She began to move her hips back and forth. Naruto took that as his key and began to gently move as well. Before long the two lovers built up a vigorous pace and were quickly approaching their mutual climax. Naruto grunted. Kyuubi-chan, I'm close. Kyuubi was panting. Me too, Naruto-kun. Do it, make me yours. Naruto gave a final thrust and released deep inside her. Kyuubi screamed out her orgasm at the same time. Then her mind nearly exploded as the bond took effect and she learned everything about Naruto. She gasped at the massive influx of information. Then she felt his emotions as if they were hers. It made her heart soar. All the love and affection he held for her, it was massive and unending. Naruto was seeing all of Kyuubi as well, and what he saw saddened him greatly. He saw how she was hated and feared for just being herself, and he promised himself that anyone who tried to treat her like that again would answer to him. Kyuubi felt his feeling in regards to how her life was since she was born, and she couldn't stop the tears of happiness from streaking down her face. Using the knowledge she gained from the bond, she returned all his feelings as strongly as she could. She smiled at him through her tears. Thank you, Naruto-kun. I love you too with all of my heart, and I promise to always do my best to make you happy. Naruto smiled a gentle smile back and nodded as he felt how truly happy she was over the bond. Kyuubi's smile turned into a foxy grin. You know, since we're in a time bubble, we've got all the time in the world to explore each other. Her voice had quieted and gained a husky undertone. Naruto grinned back. All the time in the world, my sweet Kitsune Hyme. Next time on A Beast Comes Home. Naruto prepares to show Konoha a new improved him and to take the top spot in the exams to become Rookie of the Year. Is Konoha ready for the beast to show its face? Haha, I highly doubt that. The time bubble fell and a young-looking blonde boy stood up from his sitting position with a grin. Man, talk about insatiable Kumiko-chan. It's not my fault, it felt so amazing that I couldn't get enough, Naruto-kun. She purred over the bond. Naruto gave a sheepish laugh and rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, fair enough, but still that was intense. If it wasn't for my physiology I'd be in a coma. Not that a coma from you would be a bad thing, but I have things to do. He heard Kumiko snickering over the bond and rolled his eyes at his newest wife. Okay, time to get ready to go to the academy. He grinned at the thought of the reactions he was going to garner. So with that thought in mind he moved over to his closet and frowned at his old orange jumpsuits. Man, I still love the color orange, but it's just not practical at all for a ninja. So he thought about it and decided to go with all black clothes with red highlights in honor of his mother's hair. It helped that red was basically deep orange, so it was also one of his favorite colors. He took a second to envision his desired outfit, then snapped his fingers, and just like that he had his new clothes. His outfit consisted of a black long-sleeve shirt with deep red stripes down the sleeves and sides with a red Uzumaki clan swirl in the center on the back. His pants were plain black Anbu-style pants with a few pouches for kunai and various things. Along with black shoes, socks and underwear, to complete the outfit he also had his Zanpakuto, Zero, on his back. With that done he ate some instant ramen for breakfast. Even after 1200 years ramen was still amazing to him. So Naruto, I know the plan from the bond, but are you sure that's what you want to do? Kumiko had gotten the gist of the plan from Naruto's memories and was a bit concerned about how it would go over. Naruto gave a foxy grin. I'm sure, Kumiko-chan, it's the most believable thing I could come up to explain my abilities and knowledge. The plan being to tell the Sandaime Sarutobi and anyone else who needed to know that he had been hiding his true abilities for years, due to fear of the villagers trying to kill him and the civilian council banishing him from the village, and that since he was now a shinobi he no longer had as much to fear from them and had decided to reveal his abilities. As to how he got them, he planned to tell them the truth about Kumiko and that she had been training him for years, and he would go on to explain that she has the ability to create time bubbles that cease the occupants' aging so they could train. He was only planning to tell those he was closest to, such as family bonded, that he was a time traveler, and only mate bonded would know the whole truth for now. As for Kumiko's seal, they had decided she would stay in it for now since they didn't want to alert anyone to Naruto's true power. As it was, Kumiko didn't mind staying in the seal for a few more years since the bond let her converse with Naruto and he could make a cage bunchen of her so she could get out of the seal, and when it dispelled she would get all the memories. It wasn't the same as actually being there, but it was good enough for now. It also helped that she now had a mansion fit for a queen in the middle of a beautiful mountain range instead of a cage in a sewer. Naruto finished up his breakfast and noticed it was time to head to the academy. So he headed out the door towards the academy. Along the way he noticed the hateful looks directed at him from the villagers that he hadn't received in 1,000 years and chuckled at the irony of it all. Ah, good old Konoha. In no time at all he was at the academy. He had 10 minutes to spare and figured he'd use the time to start getting to know another one of his possible mates. Hinata was nervous about the exams today and whether or not she would get good marks. She wanted to do good to make her father proud and hopefully get a certain blonde to notice her. That's when she saw Naruto enter the room and her heart skipped a beat. He looked nothing like before. Thanks to the wardrobe change she could see his body better. She assumed that his jumpsuit had hidden all his muscle because she never thought he was so in shape. Not only that, but he had a confidence about him that wasn't there before. Her heart sped up when she noticed he was coming right towards her and she wondered what he might want. Naruto made a beeline straight for the young Hyuga heiress and stopped beside her. Hey Hinata-chan, is this seat taken? Hinata was stunned for a moment. He wants to sit beside me. No Naruto-san, that seat isn't taken. She blushed and poked her index fingers together. Naruto still couldn't get over how he had not noticed her for the longest time the first time round, and he was going to give her a good healthy relationship this time around if she was willing. He grinned at her and sat down to her right, remembering Kiba liked to sit on her left most of the time. Hey Hinata, I wanted to ask if you wanted to be my friend. I don't have many and you did help me out that one time when I was younger. I'm sorry for ignoring you all this time. I did it because I didn't want the bullies to come after you because you were my friend. But since we're graduating today and I'll be a shinobi, I don't have to worry so much about that, and I wanted to start over with you if you were willing. He gave her a gentle smile and waited for her response. Hinata was stunned. Naruto wants to be my friend. But she already knew her answer. I'd like that, Naruto. I don't have many friends either. She gave a small honest smile. Thank you for giving me the chance to be your friend, Hinata. I won't make you regret it, I promise. He smiled at her for a few more seconds, then the rest of the students filed in, so he turned his attention to that. Kiba, like usual, sat to Hinata's left and gave them both a look, then grinned at them. Finally, You two stopped playing hard to get with each other. Hinata blushed at his words and ducked her head. Naruto grinned right back and gave a retort. Yeah, I asked her to be my friend, but I wouldn't be opposed to her becoming my girlfriend later on once we get to know each other. That was all it took. Hinata fainted with a monstrous crimson blush. Naruto and Kiba both gave a chuckle and Naruto reached over and put an arm around her to make sure she didn't fall out of her seat. Kiba smiled at the action. It's about time you noticed that monstrous crush she's had on you for years. Naruto nodded and sheepishly rubbed the back of his head with his free hand. I've known for a while, but I didn't do anything about it because I didn't want all those bullies and the villagers to try anything because she was my friend. However, since we're becoming shinobi today, I won't have to worry as much. Kiba's eyes widened in realization and he nodded in understanding. That was really smart, Naruto. Just take care of her, all right? She's a precious friend of mine and if you hurt her you'll answer to me. Naruto gained an expression that slightly awed Kiba because of the power in his eyes. I would never hurt her and I'll protect her with my life, Kiba, with my life. Naruto was aware that Hinata had woken up and was pretending to still be unconscious so she could listen to what they were saying. He wanted her to hear that because it was the honest truth and he wanted Kiba to know his friend was safe. Kiba nodded in acceptance of that. Man, I get the feeling Naruto has gained some serious power. This exam is going to be interesting. Before they could get any deeper into conversation, the door opened and Iruka walked in. Mizuki wasn't there for whatever reason and Naruto counted his lucky stars, then turned to Iruka with a grin. Naruto shook Hinata gently to let her know class was starting, then went back to his thoughts. Iruka stepped forward to give his speech. Okay class, today's the day of the final exam. If you pass you'll be given a ninja rank. All of you who pass will be given the genin rank. Any who manage to get a perfect score in all areas will be automatically recommended for the Chunin exams in a few months by the Hokage himself. The student with the top score will receive a special black-clothed headband and the title, Rookie of the Year. You will be tested in up to 4 areas. The mandatory tests to pass are ninjutsu and taijutsu. Additional tests, should you choose to take them, are kenjutsu, swordsmanship, and genjutsu. With that he led the students all the way out to the third training field. Naruto noticed there were storm clouds in the sky and thunder in the distance, but it wasn't raining. This was better than he could have hoped for. In regards to his debut, there were also 3 shinobi there to oversee the exams. They were his old sensei Kakashi Hatake, the proctor of the Chunin exams Anko Midorishi, and captain of the soon-to-be teammate Kurenai Yuhi. Okay, when your name is called, step forward. The ninjutsu test will be first, then taijutsu, and if anyone wants to take them, kenjutsu and genjutsu will be last. So let us know if you wish to take them after the first 2. Keep in mind you have 2 jonin and a tokubetsu jonin watching you, so no funny business. The Konoha 11 plus Sasuke were called forward in alphabetical order by their last names. All of the first 10 scored the highest in the class with all A and B ranks on the genin scale on the ninjutsu test. The ninjutsu test had them doing basic jutsu, such as the clone jutsu and transformation jutsu, with an opportunity to showcase any extra jutsu they might know. Sasuke and Naruto were last since their last names started with A, U. Sasuke Uchiha. At his name everyone got excited to see what he could do. He did a superb clone jutsu and transformation jutsu. Then for his extra jutsu he did something that stunned the judges. He made the hand seals at a high genin low chunin speed and called out, Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu. Fire release. Fireball Jutsu. The result was a moderately sized fireball of a low chunin level, but it left him out of breath and panting. So they gave him an A for the clone jutsu, an A for the transformation jutsu, and an S on the genin scale for the fireball jutsu. Everyone was impressed. He was the only one to get an S so far, even if it was only on the genin scale and on a jutsu he learned on his own time that became even more impressive. Last but currently not least was Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. Iruka had high hopes for Naruto this year, and judging by his appearance he was right to have them. Naruto calmly walked forward. Most of his classmates weren't expecting much from him and it showed in their bored expressions. All except the proctors, Kiba, Hinata, and 2 or 3 others seemed ready to move on to taijutsu. Naruto walked a little out past the judges to give him the space he needed, then turned back to them. Before he began he spoke. Okay, just you guys, just so you know, I've been training in secret for years and only slacked off to cover for myself until I was strong enough to protect me and those I care about. Most of the class gave him disbelieving looks, then Sakura spoke up. Just get on with it, Naruto baka. He gave her his best foxy grin, then turned to Kakashi. Kakashi-sensei, you'll need your Sharingan to verify all this. Kakashi's visible eye widened at that. How does this kid know my name? And that I have the Sharingan? Planning to ask Naruto those questions later, he gave a hesitant nod and revealed his Sharingan. Naruto's words and the fact that Kakashi had the Sharingan drew gasps of surprise and amazement from all those present. The instructors were all excited to see what he had, especially Iruka and Kakashi. Meanwhile the rest of the class were giving him curious and incredulous looks except for Kiba and Hinata, who were excited to see what he could do. Iruka cleared his throat to get everyone's attention, then spoke. "Okay Naruto, you may begin. First the clone jutsu, then the transformation jutsu. After that you can show us any extra jutsu you have." Naruto nodded and made the hand sign for the Kage Bunshin no jutsu. All but Kakashi were calm, but the Jonin with his Sharingan recognized the amount of chakra Naruto put into it and his eyes widened at what he heard next. Taju Kage Bunshin no jutsu. Multiple shadow clone jutsu. In a massive puff of smoke behind him over 1,000 clones appeared, all perfectly formed and in a perfect marching formation. Everyone there was stunned into silence. The students couldn't believe their eyes, neither could Iruka, Kakashi, Enko or Kurenai. They had never seen such a powerful Kage Bunshin jutsu. Naruto smirked, then before they could recover made the sign for the transformation jutsu. Henge, transform. Another puff of smoke and all the clones transformed into 66 perfect copies each of the Konoha 11 plus Sasuke and without Naruto plus the 4 instructors. He then dispelled all the clones and waited for them to ask him for his extra jutsu. It took a few minutes for everyone to come out of the daze they were in and they were still speechless. Then Kiba spoke. "What the hell Naruto, how did you do that?" Everyone there gave nods agreeing with his question. Naruto's response was a sly grin before he spoke. "I'll tell the instructors all the details later in private, and you and Hinata as well Kiba. As for the rest of you, it was part of my training." The instructors, Hinata and Kiba, nodded in agreement and the rest gave him angry or disappointed looks except Sasuke, who seemed to be in shock. Iruka once again cleared his throat and spoke. "Okay Naruto, you can now show us up to 3 ninjutsu for extra points if you still have the chakra." Everyone was anxious to see what he would do. Naruto nodded and spoke. "I have 2 to show you." Iruka and the other instructors nodded and everyone was excited to see what the next 2 were, but after that last 2 they didn't expect him to have enough chakra for anything insane. He flashed through a set of hand signs so fast Kakashi's Sharingan couldn't track them all, and to everyone else it was a blur, then spoke the name of the jutsu and it shocked them all again. Kaden. Goryuka no Jutsu, Fire Release, Great Dragon Fire Technique. The result was a massive dragon-shaped fireball being shot into and parting the clouds. For the second time in 10 minutes everyone there was stunned into silence, but he wasn't done yet and flashed through another set of hand signs just as fast as the first, then spoke the name of his technique. Raiden. Dairajin, Lightning Release, Great Wolf Deity. N. Basically a wolf version of Sasuke's Kirin, where the wolf looks like the wolf in the game Okami but made of lightning. And it doesn't require storm clouds, it just makes it easier. His fingertips sparked with lightning, stunning everyone as he moved them in a sweeping circular pattern for a second, and like lightning bending from Avatar, The Last Airbender, the show, not the shitty movie. Then with his index and middle finger on his right hand pointed into the sky and fired a massive lightning bolt as powerful as an actual bolt of lightning. The puzzling part was everyone got the sense there should be more to it with a name like that. When nothing happened for a few seconds most of them thought that it was actually over, then they saw a massive wolf made of pure lightning descend from the clouds. The wolf hovered for a second as if looking down on the mere mortals below it, then Naruto raised his hand and brought it down to point at a spot about a quarter mile away in the middle of a clearing in the training field. The wolf moved as fast as the lightning it was made of and struck the indicated area, disappearing in a massive lightning explosion as big as 100 lightning bolts that made the whole class fall over, and the instructors had to send chakra to their feet to stay standing. Once everyone was on their feet again and staring at Naruto wide-eyed and utterly speechless for the 4th time in 10 minutes, he gave them all a big cheeky grin and asked, "Well, do I pass?" Everyone their face faulted into the ground. Kakashi was the first to recover from the shock of it all and speak. "Yes Naruto, you pass. However, you will be explaining to the Hokage later about that training of yours and how you learned 4 at least SS rank ninjutsu. And also about how you have the chakra reserves to do that back to back with, if my eye isn't deceiving me, plenty to spare." Naruto gave a sheepish laugh and rubbed the back of his head before nodding in understanding. "So what are my scores?" he asked with some excitement seeping into his voice. The 4 instructors huddled for a second, then nodded and broke. The whole class listened anxiously for his score. Iruka stepped forward and grinned at Naruto before speaking. "Naruto Uzumaki, your scores are as follows: Clone Jutsu score, SS above Jonin level; Transformation Jutsu score, SS above Jonin level; Extra Jutsu, number of Extra Jutsu 2 score, for both as SSS Cage level." Everyone was speechless yet again at his scores. Everyone was still shocked by Naruto's display during the ninjutsu exam. Some of them were a little fearful of approaching him. Kiba and Hinata however were eager to question him. "Hey Naruto, what the hell kind of training have you been doing anyways?" Kiba was anxious to know because to get those kind of scores it must have been insane. He really wasn't kidding when he said he waited till he could protect those he cared about. With that kind of strength, anything short of a cage level shinobi would be hard pressed to keep up with him. Hinata nodded in agreement of Kiba's question. The three of them were a little away from everybody else, waiting on the instructors to give everyone a sparring partner so they could begin the taijutsu exam. Naruto smirked. Well, you see, I wanted to get strong to protect those I care about, and thanks to a friend of mine who trained me for the last few years in secret using special regimes and the like, I managed to become a Jonin level shinobi, and due to certain circumstances my chakra reserves are huge already. So that's why I can use my most powerful jutsu back to back like that and still be okay. Kiba nodded a bit hesitantly after that statement. Naruto-san, are you going to have enough stamina for the Taijutsu X exam? Hinata was amazed at Naruto's skill in the ninjutsu part of the exams but didn't want Naruto to overwork himself. Naruto smiled gently at Hinata and moved over beside her to drape an arm across her shoulders, making her blush. Thank you for the concern, Hinata, but I'll be fine, and I promise I'll stop if I get too tired, okay? Hinata ducked her head a little and blushed more at his thanks, then nodded. Meanwhile, most of the class, instructors included, were wondering what he would be capable of on the taijutsu exam. Some of the students were hoping that his ninjutsu skills were his best area and that he wouldn't be as good at taijutsu. Iruka stepped forward to announce the sparring lineup. Okay, we will now begin the taijutsu part of the exams. Iruka took a second to look over his list, then announced the first match. The matches that followed were as expected, with the first 10 of the Konoha 11 taking the top spots in the class with A and B ranks on the Genin scale. And as expected, Naruto and Sasuke got pitted against each other. Naruto Uzumaki vs. Sasuke Uchiha. Sakura was as usual rooting for Sasuke, but after Naruto's earlier display was little nervous about the outcome. You can do it, Sasuke, kick his. Sasuke was a little nervous himself after Naruto's display of ninjutsu but wouldn't let that stop him. Both of them moved to the center of the improvised ring that had been set up in the middle of the clearing in the third training ground. So you're not actually as much of an idiot as you act sometimes, huh, Naruto? Well, that's good to know, but I'm not going to let you win. With that, Sasuke got into a low Chunin level taijutsu stance. Naruto got into a loose stance with his hands raised high in front of his face with a slight bounce in his feet, and a traditional Muay Thai stance that no one recognized. Iruka looked them both over, then nodded and raised, then dropped his hand. Begin. Sasuke dashed in, intending on not giving Naruto time to do anything. He led with a low left to right spinning sweep to the legs that Naruto dodged by hopping over it. He tried to follow up with a high right-handed punch to the face, but that was swept aside by Naruto's wrist, so he went in with a left-handed punch to the gut that Naruto caught with his right hand. To get out of Naruto's grip, he went for a left knee aimed at Naruto's stomach. Naruto blocked it with his left forearm, then let go and spun into a roundhouse kick to Sasuke's left side, launching him about 10 feet to Naruto's left. Sasuke gasped out in pain at the force behind the blow and hit the ground on his right side, but managed to roll to his feet. Everyone was surprised at the skill Naruto was showing. Even with his earlier display of ninjutsu, they expected it to at least be a close fight, but he was handling Sasuke fairly easily. Damn it all, when did the Dobi get this good? He really wasn't kidding about having done some insane training. I can tell he is holding back, but not how much. Sasuke gritted his teeth at his own apparent weakness, then assumed his stance again and motioned Naruto to bring it on. Naruto nodded and dashed at him with low Jonin speed, further surprising the audience. Then came in with a leaping low kick from his right leg to Sasuke's left thigh. Sasuke, having expected a higher stomach kick, didn't see it coming in time and could only take the hit and grunt in pain. Naruto backed off a bit, then came back in with a hard right straight aimed at Sasuke's face. Sasuke just managed to duck in time, but the force of the punch sent a shockwave past his face. If I get hit with that, it's over. Not wanting to stay on the defensive, Sasuke hopped and tried to drop a left elbow to Naruto's right shoulder. Naruto caught the elbow with his left hand, then gave a kick with his left leg to Sasuke's right side, once again launching him about 10 feet, this time to Naruto's right. Sasuke hit the ground on his already injured left side and grunted in pain before rolling to his feet, panting. Damn it, I can't beat him, he's still holding back, I can tell, just not how much. Swallowing his pride, Sasuke spoke. Iruka-sensei, I forfeit. Naruto is holding back quite a bit and I still can't win as it is. Iruka nodded and called the match. Winner Naruto Uzumaki. Everyone was stunned. Naruto had just beaten one of the two best taijutsu users in their age group, the other being Rock Lee. Sasuke's fangirls were pissed but didn't say anything because they didn't want to get in trouble during the exams. Naruto and Sasuke were still in the ring and Naruto walked up to Sasuke. What, come to gloat about how you beat me in both tests? Naruto shook his head in the negative and placed his hand on Sasuke's shoulder and spoke so no one else could hear. No, I just wanted to say that you're good, and I'm not saying that out of pity. I've had years of training under an amazing sensei to the point where I'm at a low or medium Jonin level in taijutsu, and you're right, I was holding back, but just so you could show the instructors what you could do, not because you weren't a worthy opponent. Even though he was lying about his true level, Naruto was being honest about his intentions. This time around he wanted to try and be a positive influence on Sasuke and see if he could save Sasuke from going down the path of the Avenger. Despite his cocky attitude, at the beginning Sasuke did have the potential to be a good person. It was the curse mark, Orochimaru, and his own brother Itachi that had turned his desire to get stronger into a corrupt greed and need for power. Granted, Itachi had at least some good intentions, but as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Sasuke was surprised at Naruto's words. He was expecting Naruto to gloat and put him down, but now he found his opinion of Naruto rising. His main problem with Naruto before had been his slacker nature and disrespectful attitude. And I know, ironic that that's his problem with Naruto. However, with some of the truth of his training revealed along with the skills to back up his words and his new still happy-go-lucky but more respectful attitude, Sasuke found his words truthful and sincere. As to his response, he didn't really know what to say. Thanks I guess, and that was a good fight. Naruto nodded with a smile and walked out of the ring back towards the rest of the class, with Sasuke trailing a little behind. When the two reached the class, Naruto received glares from all the Sasuke fangirls except Ino, who was giving him an appraising look, chief among which was Sakura, who had a bone to pick with him. Naruto, you brute, did you really have to be so hard on poor Sasuke-kun? Before Naruto could retort, surprisingly Sasuke spoke. It's okay, Sakura. He was holding back quite a bit, and besides, it was a spar, it should be taken seriously, which despite holding back he did take me seriously. Everyone there was stunned at the maturity Sasuke was showing, and since he apparently didn't mind the loss so much, his fangirls backed down a bit, though they still gave Naruto slightly angry looks. The instructors huddled for a moment, then nodded, and Iruka stepped forward with a smile. Okay, you two, very nice work, the both of you were amazing. I haven't seen taijutsu skills like that in years. Now then, your scores for the taijutsu exam. He took a moment to double-check his clipboard, then spoke. Sasuke Uchiha, score S rank on the Genin scale, with an added note of good deduction skills for figuring out you couldn't win. Excellent job. Sasuke nodded in acceptance of that. Meanwhile, Lee was in the background with clouds over his head at his loss before getting excited and ranting about doubling his training. Naruto Uzumaki, score B rank on the Jonin scale, with an added note that you were apparently holding back, but since we can only judge you on what you showed, we gave you that score. Outstanding work, Naruto. Everyone went slightly wide-eyed at that score, but most were starting to understand that Naruto really wasn't kidding when he said he had done some serious training, so they weren't as shocked as they were at first. Naruto nodded with a big smile at Iruka. After that they took a 30-minute lunch break. During the lunch break, Naruto made his way over to Kiba and Hinata to talk to his two friends. Kiba saw Naruto sneaking up behind Hinata and smirked. Hello, Hinata-chan, came Naruto's voice from right behind her. Hinata was shocked and jumped a little with a cute, eep. Naruto chuckled at her cuteness. How in the hell did I never notice this beautiful girl for so long last time? Oh Naruto-kun, I'm starting to see why you like this little one so much, and if your memories are anything to go by, in a few more years she'll be drop-dead gorgeous. I can't wait for her to join the bond. Kumiko purred into Naruto's mind. Yeah, I know Kumiko-chan, she is amazing, and this time around I'm going to give her the loving relationship she deserves. Naruto took a seat next to Hinata under the tree her and Kiba were using for shade since the clouds had cleared during the taijutsu exam. He pulled out a simple sandwich and drink for his lunch. He would have preferred ramen, but it isn't exactly boxed lunch friendly. So either of you taking an extra test? Kiba was the first to speak. No, I don't know Kenjutsu or Genjutsu, and besides I'm worn out from the other two tests. Naruto nodded in understanding, then turned to Hinata for her answer. Hinata blushed at his gaze and answered. Me too, I don't know either, and I am tired as well. Naruto smiled at her. Yeah, you did great on both tests, Hinata-chan. I'll bet your father will be proud. Hinata ducked her head and blushed harder at his praise, but nodded her thanks for his words. The three friends sat in a comfortable silence as they ate their lunch and waited out the 30-minute lunch break. After the 30 minutes were up, Iruka stepped forward. Okay, anyone who wants to take either of the other two tests, come up here and pick which you want to take. Anyone who is done, find a seat. Only 3 students stepped up. Naruto, who chose to take both. Sasuke, who chose to take the Genjutsu exam, and Sakura, who chose to also take the Genjutsu exam. The Genjutsu exam was first and all 3 passed. Sasuke and Sakura surprisingly tied with a B on the Genin scale in both dispelling Genjutsu and casting it. Naruto got a B on the Jonin scale for casting and an S on the Jonin scale for dispelling them. Even Kurenai couldn't cast a Genjutsu that could hold him for more than a couple seconds. Everyone who at this point were at least getting an idea of Naruto's true level were once again highly impressed. After the Genjutsu test was the Kenjutsu test, and everyone was excited to see what Naruto could do. Some had noticed the dangerous-looking sword on his back, and based on his performance so far were expecting more of the same. Iruka stepped forward with a smile for Naruto. Okay Naruto, let's see if you can make it 4 for 4. Naruto smiled back with a foxy grin and nodded. The Kenjutsu exam will consist of 2 parts. The first will be a spar against shadow clones provided by Kakashi, who is a Jonin level Kenjutsu user. I'm giving Kakashi sword skills since in my FIC he learned some of his father's style and has copied numerous styles with his Sharingan. It won't be a main skill of his since it just isn't his style, but he'll have it in his back pocket. The second part will give you a chance to demonstrate any special techniques you know. Naruto nodded and moved to the field. Kakashi, rightly assuming Naruto was at least Chunin level in Kenjutsu, started off with the maximum 20 clones, which put a serious strain on his chakra reserves. Naruto smirked and drew his sword, which drew gasps for its beauty. What followed could only be described as a masterwork. None of the clones could touch him and he effortlessly annihilated them all in under half a minute. Everyone for the 4th time that day were shocked at his abilities. Some of the girls were even starting to give Naruto hungry looks, and Ino seemed to be pondering her opinion of him. Once that was over, Iruka stepped forward, still smiling. Excellent work, Naruto. Now for the second part, you can show us up to 3 Kenjutsu techniques. They can either be chakra-based or just special sword styles that you haven't already shown. Naruto nodded and moved so everyone was behind him. Okay, I have 2 to show you and they're both my own inventions. Everyone's eyes widened at that. Not only had he created an S-rank lightning jutsu, but he also apparently created 2 Kenjutsus as well. Naruto readied his sword for his first attack, then spoke its name while swinging the blade horizontally, making sure to fire it at only a Jonin level, which didn't even require him to unseal the blade. Kokuho, Black Phoenix, which resulted in a fairly big phoenix made of black and red flames shooting from the blade at the row of trees in front of him, cleaving them in 2 like a hot knife through butter and causing whatever came in contact with the phoenix to turn to ashes. After about 100 feet it dissipated, leaving about 15 trees toppled over and scorched. Once again everyone's jaws were on the floor. Naruto chuckled and prepared his next attack. He squared his shoulders, then spoke the name of his attack. Koka Raiga, Dark Fire Lightning Fang, which coated the blade in black and red flames and black lightning. Then he swung the blade vertically along the same trajectory as his first attack. If you want an idea of what it looks like, it's basically Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho from Bleach but made of fire and lightning. The result was a fire and lightning wave that tore a 1-foot wide, 5-foot deep, 100-foot long trench into the ground. He turned back to face everyone, who all had odd looks on their faces including the instructors, and walked back over to the rest of the class. Hiba and Hinata came up to praise his skill. That was unbelievable, Naruto, Hiba exclaimed with a smile. Hinata nodded her agreement with a blush and a little smile. You were amazing, Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded his thanks to them with a smile, then quickly planted a kiss on Hinata's cheek and said with a beaming smile for her. Thanks, Hinata-chan. It was too much for her and she fainted right there before she hit the ground. Naruto caught her and held her up, causing Kiba to chuckle. A few minutes later the instructors broke apart and lined up in front of the class. Iruka cleared his throat. Naruto Uzumaki, your scores for the Kenjutsu exam are as follows: for the first part S-rank Jonin level and for the second SS Jonin level. This got excited murmurs from the class, while Naruto just nodded while still holding Hinata. After about a minute Iruka cleared his throat again and the class quieted down. Okay, I'll now announce the top 5 scorers for the exams and Rookie of the Year. Naruto gently shook Hinata awake, and when she woke up she had a furious blush. He stood beside her and chuckled at her cuteness, then turned his attention back to Iruka to hear the scores. In 5th place with a respectable B average on the Genin scale is Sakura Haruno. Sakura pumped her fist and grinned, earning glares from some of the other kunoichi. In 4th place with an impressive AB average on the Genin scale is Kiba Inuzuka. Kiba pumped his fist while Akamaru let out a happy bark. Naruto and Hinata both gave him a smile. In 3rd place with a solid average on the Genin scale is Hinata Hyuga. Naruto and Kiba smiled at Hinata and Naruto wrapped an arm around her and hugged her, making her blush. In 2nd place with a very impressive AS average on the Genin scale is Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke gave a curt nod at that, knowing Naruto had earned 1st place. Some of his fangirls giving Naruto murderous glares knowing he had gotten 1st place. And in 1st place and also Rookie of the Year, along with an automatic recommendation for the Chunin exams from the Hokage himself with an unheard of S average on the Jonin scale in all 4 tests, Naruto Uzumaki. Please come up here so you may receive your special black-clothed headband. Naruto smiled and made his way up to the front toward Iruka. Some of the class were giving him nasty looks. When he got to the front, Iruka tied his new headband onto his forehead and spoke so no one could hear. I knew you could do it, Naruto. I'm so proud of you, but damn, that was amazing. Tomorrow I'll take you out to ramen to celebrate. Naruto beamed at him and nodded. Before he could rejoin the rest of the class, Kakashi stepped forward and spoke in his ear. You're coming with me to see the Hokage right after this, so don't go anywhere. Naruto gave a sheepish laugh and nod, then rejoined the class. Surprisingly, some of his classmates congratulated him on his win. Even Sasuke gave him a nod. His fangirls however were trying to glare holes in Naruto's head. Okay class, that it's the exam is over. The full list of those who passed will be on the board out front of the academy tomorrow. Those who pass will report to classroom 2B in 1 week to meet their Jonin senseis. Class dismissed. Most of the students headed home. Naruto bid Kiba and Hinata goodbye, stating he'd see them in a week, hopefully sooner. They nodded and left. Then he made his way over to Kakashi to go see the Hokage. Now that the exam was over and most of the students had gone home, Naruto knew it was time to bite the bullet and go see the Hokage, so he made his way over to Kakashi. Kakashi was waiting nearby under a tree in the shade from the afternoon sun, reading his infamous little orange book. Kakashi-sensei, I'm ready to go see the Hokage now. Kakashi looked up from his book and nodded before standing, then checking to make sure he had a copy of Naruto's exam scores for the Hokage before turning back to Naruto. Okay Naruto, let's get his over with. I don't suppose you can use a Shunshin body flicker, can you? Naruto gave a nod, so Kakashi used a leaf Shunshin to go to just outside the Hokage mansion. Naruto followed a second later using a special black and red fire and lightning Shunshin he had invented over his long life. Kakashi arrived and moments later Naruto arrived via his personal Shunshin, earning a whistle of appreciation from Kakashi due to the style of it. The two made their way up to the top of the Hokage mansion and Kakashi let the secretary know that they needed to see the Hokage. She gave Naruto a suspicious look before nodding and saying it would be a minute. The two nodded and leaned on the wall to wait. About 5 minutes later they were called in. The two entered the office to see the Hokage behind his desk glaring at all the paperwork in front of him. Kakashi cleared his throat before speaking. Hokage-sama, I've brought Naruto Uzumaki here to meet with you and discuss his exam scores. Hiruzen's eyes widened in surprise before turning and giving Naruto a serious look, then he turned back to Kakashi. Give them here Kakashi, then Naruto can explain once I read them. Both of them nodded and Kakashi walked forward and gave the Hokage the copy of Naruto's exam scores. Those are his scores from all 4 exams. I had my Sharingan active for each one, so I know it was him and not an imposter. Hiruzen nodded and took the file to read. As he read it his eyes bulged until they were the size of dinner plates. Once he was done he dropped the folder and turned to Naruto with a stern look. Explain now Naruto. Naruto stepped forward and spoke. Sure Gigi, but before I do can you ask your Anbu to leave? I only want you and Kakashi to hear this. Hiruzen nodded and signaled for them to leave. 4 Anbu melted from the shadows and walked out of the office. Naruto then pointed to the ceiling. What about the 5th one Gigi? This got a surprised look from Kakashi and Hiruzen, but before they could say anything a 5th Anbu with an all-white mask dropped from the raptors. He took a step towards the door, but before he could take a second step Naruto appeared behind him in a flash of speed. Even the Hokage couldn't track and gave him a chop to the neck, knocking him out. The Hokage called an Anbu in and told him to take the spy to Ibiki for interrogation. Once the Anbu was gone Hiruzen and Kakashi turned to Naruto with expectant looks on their faces. Naruto took a second before he spoke. Okay, so basically I've been training in secret for the last few years under a sensei using a special regime that helped me become a Jonin level shinobi. Both of their eyes widened at this information, then Kakashi spoke. But who trained you? And why keep it a secret till now? Hiruzen nodded in agreement of those questions. I trained in secret because if the villagers knew I was getting stronger they would have assumed the fox had taken over and tried even harder to kill me. Both of them gasped at his mention of the Kyuubi, then Hiruzen spoke in a deadly tone. Who told you there is an S-rank law in place to prevent anyone from telling you? Naruto gave Hiruzen what could only be described as a disappointed look before replying. The Kyuubi herself told me, and she also told me who my parents were. Gigi, you should have told me yourself. It would have been hard, but I had the right to know. Hiruzen looked down at that and nodded before speaking. I know Naruto, I should have, but I could never convince myself you were ready to know, and if the council had known they would have tried to use you in political games. No one besides me, you and the Toad Sanin Jiraiya know who your parents are. As it is, I thought it was already bad enough with them knowing you had the Kyuubi in you. He looked Naruto in the eye and asked, can you forgive me for keeping the truth from you, Naruto? Even if I had your best interests in mind, I still didn't like lying to you. Naruto gave a gentle smile before speaking. I know Gigi, those choices are always hard. I understand and forgive you. Hiruzen gave a relieved smile and nod, then Kakashi cleared his throat and spoke. Naruto, parents aside, did you say you spoke to the Kyuubi and that it's a she? Hiruzen and Kakashi saw Naruto give a nod before speaking. Yup, her name is Kumiko and she didn't attack the village 12 years ago. Madara Uchiha used his Sharingan to force her to attack after he broke the seal on my mom while she was weak from giving birth. Kakashi and Hiruzen both went wide-eyed at his words before Hiruzen spoke with some heat in his voice. Naruto, you can't trust what that demon says. There is no way she is telling the truth. Kakashi nodded in agreement of that statement. Immediately the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees and the glare Naruto leveled at them made even the Hokage feel a slight shiver of fear trail up his spine. Naruto answered with a tone that brokered no argument. She is not a demon. If you actually look at the records, there is only 2 confirmed unprovoked attacks by her on Anywhere, both involving Madara. The first when he fought the first Hokage at the Valley of the End, and the second 12 years ago. Both times Madara used his Sharingan to control her. I mean, think about, she is a few thousand years old, and in all that time she only ever attacks twice unprovoked. Doesn't that seem off to you? If she was a demon as everyone says, there should be dozens of records of unprovoked attacks, but if you stop and read every one of them, the humans started the fight assuming she was a monster. Trying to kill her for no other reason than she was different, or trying to use her for power. Naruto's statement made both of them stop and think, and when they did they realized he was right. All of the records they could recall indicated the people started it. After a few minutes of pondering Naruto's words, Hiruzen spoke. You're right, Naruto, there is only 2 unprovoked attacks that I recall. But still, Madara Uchiha being alive is a bad omen for the village, especially if he orchestrated the attack 12 years ago. Hiruzen was already making plans to have Jiraiya use his spy network to see if they could find evidence of Madara's whereabouts. Him being alive would explain an abundance of questions and occurrences. Naruto nodded in agreement with that. The Hokage didn't even know the half of it, but that would come later. Kakashi once again steered the conversation back on course. So who trained you, Naruto? Naruto gave a foxy grin. Why, Kumiko-chan, of course. Who else did you think it was? She has the ability to slow time and halt aging in a small bubble around her, or me, her Jinchuriki, for about an hour on the outside, which is a day in the field. So I would go into my mindscape and train there, and she would use her chakra to transfer the results of the physical side of the training to my body. It hurts like hell, and only I could survive it since she's been in me pretty much all my life, but a day of training for an hour real time once a day for a few years is how I'm so strong. Kakashi and Hiruzen both went wide-eyed at the explanation, but thought it over and nodded because it made as much sense as anything about the tailed beasts. Then Kakashi spoke. So what are you going to do, Naruto? Your Jonin level, you could apply for a Tokubetsu Jonin rank and be a full Jonin in a year or so. Naruto nodded and spoke. Yeah, that may be true, but I only have training in my mind, not so much the actual application in the real world, so I think I'll take my time and work my way up like everyone else. Besides, if I got made a Tokubetsu Jonin, those idiotic villagers would riot even more than they already will after what is going to happen when they find out who my parents are. The real reason Naruto wanted to work his way up was so he could help his friends, and he wanted to do it this way so he could get close to some potential mates. In actuality, he had more combat experience in his 36 years of life than most of the Jonins plus the Hokage combined, but he wasn't planning on revealing that to but a select few. They both gave a nod in understanding, and Hiruzen gave a sad smile. If they would only stop to get to know you, they would see you're no demon, but they let their grief for their loved ones turn into hate. Naruto and Kakashi nodded in agreement. Then Naruto spoke. On that note, I having something to talk about regarding my parents as well, and since Kumiko said he knew my father, Kakashi should know who my parents were, and he is welcome to hear what I'm about to say as long as he doesn't reveal it unless I want it to be revealed. Hiruzen and Kakashi both nodded. Kakashi was curious to know. As Gigi already knows, my parents were Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. Kakashi gasped out and stared at Naruto with his visible eye with a shocked look of realization on his face. How in the hell did I never notice it before? Take away the whisker marks and you have a pint-sized version of Sensei and his last name. There was only one Uzumaki in the village, it was so obvious. After giving Kakashi a minute to process that information, Naruto continued. I wish to claim my inheritance and assume my position as clan head. I've read up on the laws and there are exceptions for age for the last member of a clan, all of which I meet. Plus, I'm the last of 2 clans, which lifts the Chunin rank requirement restriction but will most likely force the CRA on me, which I'm prepared to accept if it comes to that. Most didn't know it, but before he died my father made the Namikazes an official clan, and he would have recruited members but passed on before he could. Hiruzen nodded because he knew Naruto was right. You're right, Naruto. I'll call a meeting of the Shinobi Council first thing tomorrow morning to make the announcement. For now we will keep the civilians out of it since this is a shinobi matter. Also, I'll give you directions to the Namikaze estate. It's under a blood seal, so only you can open it. And tomorrow your account at the bank will be updated with your inheritance. Naruto nodded his thanks and Hiruzen handed him a map with directions. The meeting will be at 8 AM, don't be late, Naruto. Naruto nodded and he and Kakashi left. Once they were out of the building, Kakashi nodded his farewell and they went their separate ways. Naruto was deep in thought as he was heading to the Namikaze compound and decided he better tell Hiruzen the whole truth so he would have the freedom to deal with Madara. With that thought in mind, he checked his surroundings. Once he was sure no one was around, he shunshined back to the Hokage's office, causing Hiruzen to tense and prepare for an attack until he saw it was Naruto. Then he relaxed. Naruto, don't do that. If my Anbu had been here you'd be dead. Naruto gave a sheepish laugh and shook his head in the negative. Nah, I can't die, Gigi. Hiruzen gave Naruto a puzzled look, so before he explained further he used his ascended senses to make sure no one could hear their conversation. Once he was sure no one was around to hear, he continued. What I told you earlier was a cover story. The part about Kumiko-chan being innocent was true but not about my training. You see, I'm a 1236-year-old immortal version of Naruto Uzumaki from the future who came back and took over my younger self to prevent a catastrophe. You see, in my timeline Madara gathered all of the tailed beasts and attempted to put the world under an internal genjutsu. I attacked him right before it took effect and it blew up in my face. Somehow I absorbed the blast but it destroyed that universe. I was thrown into the in-between, a space between realities where ascended beings live. I found out that as a result of absorbing the blast I was now one of them, but my original universe was destroyed, everything and everyone in it just gone. I almost broke when I learned that, but after a while I decided to explore the other universes to train and get stronger so something like that would never happen to my loved ones again. For 1200 years I explored, battled, loved and trained to be stronger. I am invulnerable literally. Even if Madara set off another blast like that it wouldn't kill me, just this universe, but I'm not going to let that happen. I came back here to save those I lost and help make things better. Hiruzen had never heard anything like that in his life, but from the sheer determination and power in Naruto's eyes he could tell he was telling the truth, so he chose to believe Naruto. That is incredible, Naruto, but why tell me this? Naruto gave him a gentle smile. Because you always were a grandfather to me and I trust you, also I want to give you a gift. Hiruzen smiled at his words and nodded. Naruto motioned Hiruzen to get up. Once he was up, Naruto clasped forearms with him in a brother's handshake, and then his eyes flashed a powerful red for a split second, followed by a bright red flash, almost like a flash tag had been set off. When the flash disappeared, there stood a 20-year-old looking Hiruzen in perfect health. Hiruzen gasped and stepped back, then looked at his hands in wonder, then ran over and looked in a mirror while touching his face. This is amazing. What did you do, Naruto? Naruto chuckled and started explaining. It's one of my ascended abilities. It lets me form bonds with people. The one I did with you was a family bond. You're immortal now, but only in this universe, and have a couple of my minor abilities such as being able to control your age and double the chakra reserves. Also, if you run out it won't kill you, and you have an accelerated healing factor, but you're not invulnerable like me and can be killed if injured bad enough. Hiruzen gaped in wonder at that and concentrated for a second, and sure enough he looked 70 again. Then he reverted to his 20-year-old self and back to 70, then turned to Naruto with a beaming smile. Thank you, Naruto, this is an amazing gift. Naruto nodded with a smile of his own, then spoke. I'm glad to do it, Gigi, but obviously you can't tell anyone about this and you'll have to retire from public eye in a decade or so, then you can revert to your younger self and disappear to do whatever you want. You have an eternity now after all. Hiruzen thought for a second, then nodded his agreement with that. It was an amazing idea. All the possibilities, a fresh start and a peaceful life just like I've always wanted. Naruto then got a serious expression on his face, making Hiruzen come out of his musings and pay attention. Gigi, I need to ask a favor. Hiruzen nodded. After the gift Naruto just gave him, he'd do anything within reason. I need you to let me handle anything to do with the Jinchurikis on my own if I need to, or with backup. I need that freedom so I can throw a wrench in Madara's plans. Since I don't know where he is, then the best option would be to gather as many Jinchurikis as possible and have them join my clan or Konoha, or at least ally with us. Hiruzen thought it over and it made sense, so he nodded. Okay, Naruto, I'll have Jiraiya keep an eye out for anything to do with the Jinchurikis or Madara and let you know when anything comes up so we can act according to your discretion. After Naruto's story about what happened in his timeline, on top of proof of his words by giving him his gift, Hiruzen wasn't going to doubt Naruto and would follow his lead while dealing with Madara. On top of that, at 1200 years old, Naruto was now technically his senior, and he realized Naruto probably had an immense amount of experience. Naruto nodded his thanks with a smile and was about to go see his new compound, but Hiruzen stopped him. Naruto, what's the real reason you're staying at Genin? Naruto thought about it, then answered. Love and friends. I want to get to know them again and hopefully find a few wives along the way, since I know the CRA is coming into effect tomorrow. Hiruzen nodded and bid Naruto a good night and thanked him sincerely for his gift. After Naruto left the Hokage Tower, he stopped by the grocery store and stocked up on about a month's worth of food and sealed it in a scroll for easier carrying. He'd become adequate at seals over the years, but nowhere near his father's level, and was hoping he could remedy that with his father's notes and a time dilation field. Then swiftly made his way towards the Namikaze compound. When he arrived, he was greeted with a beautiful large 2-story 5-bedroom house. He cut his finger, which quickly healed, and smeared some blood on the seal, causing the gate to swing open. The property was big enough to build a decent-sized compound to house clan members around the house, and thanks to the seal was well kept. He made his way inside and was greeted with an amazing interior, tastefully decorated. It had 5 rooms and a big kitchen. He noticed one of the rooms was an office library. He looked around and found a big safe with another blood seal on it. He opened it and found all his dad's notes on sealing jutsu along with the Hiraishin and smiled. Using his ascended ability and a dozen clones, he read all the notes in about 10 minutes. Then he dispelled the clones to gain their memories. Then went out back to the fairly big backyard and made 300 extra strong cage bunshin using some more of his ascended powers and put them under a time dilation field for 1 month for them, which was a few minutes for him, and everything outside the field. When it dropped, the clones looked battered and withered, and the field behind the house looked slightly overgrown and beaten up. Some of the trees had craters in them, and so did the ground from all the practice. He dispelled the clones and only stayed conscious because of his physiology and experience with information overload. After assimilating all the information, he smirked and disappeared with a tinge of black lightning and reappeared on the other side of the field. Haha, this is awesome. My dad was a genius, but my clones managed to make the Hiraishin work not just with seals but on line of sight and memory. To test it further, he Hiraishin to the Hokage mountain and back without seals or hand signs. I think I'll call it the Shoten Hiraishin, Ascended Flying Thunder God. You really are amazing, lover, to master and even improve the Hiraishin in only a month. Even if you were using 300 clones, I think you need a reward. DDDD. Kumiko purred over the link. Naruto grinned a goofy grin and headed back inside the house. He had some dinner, took a shower, then climbed in bed and went to his mindscape to enjoy a night of fun with his vixen. What greeted him was Kumiko half on the bed in the mindscape. The sight caused him to blush before he moved in. Hello Ko-chan, he said as he trailed kisses down her neck, causing her to gasp in pleasure. Before long the two lovers tired themselves out and fell asleep with smiles on their faces. Next morning, 6 a.m. Naruto woke up on the bed in his mindscape with a Kumiko snuggled into his chest. He looked down and chuckled at the fact that a Biju was using him as a pillow. He leaned down and trailed kisses across her face, making her stir and wake with a sleepy smile. I could get used to waking up to that. You are amazing, lover. She spoke and snuggled into his chest with a content sigh. Haha, me too. Waking up to one of my loves in my arms is always the best, but I've got to get up and get ready for the council meeting. Kumiko gave a cute pout but nodded and kissed Naruto before letting him up. Naruto gave her a smile and one more kiss before he faded from his mindscape back to the real world. Naruto opened his eyes back in the real world and looked around his new room with a smile. He was to be officially announced as a clan head today. Naruto got out of his bed and had some breakfast before occupying his time with some of his father's notes on the Hiraishin. Even if he had mastered and improved it, there was still always more to do. Before long 7:30 rolled around and it was time to get ready for the meeting. He stood from the table and made a few clones to clean up, then snapped his fingers and was dressed in the same outfit he was during the exams, complete with his Zanpakuto. He made his way out the door and walked in the direction of the council chambers at the Hokage mansion. He could have used a Shunshin or even his Shoten Hiraishin, but he had 30 minutes and didn't see a need to rush, so he walked there the civilian way. 30 minutes later he was at the door to the council chamber and opened the door to see the full shinobi council about to begin the meeting. So he walked in and found a seat, which drew puzzled looks from most who were wondering why he was there. Hiruzen nodded to Naruto with a smile, then cleared his throat to begin. I called this meeting today to announce that a clan head has been found for 2 of our clans that were thought extinct. The new clan head is none other than Naruto Uzumaki. This drew a shocked gasp from some of the shinobi present. Then Shikaku asked a question. You said he is going to be head of 2 clans. What's the name of the second clan? The Uzumaki clan is obvious, although most of us had assumed it was just a name that was given to him since he was an orphan. Hiruzen nodded and motioned Naruto to elaborate. Naruto stood and spoke. My parents were Kushina Uzumaki and the 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze, so the second clan would be the Namakazes, which my father made a clan a short time before his death. This caused all of them there to widen their eyes and some to gasp in shock. Even Hiyashi's eyes noticeably widened at this. Shikaku was the first to speak. I can't believe no ever noticed, but take away the whisker marks and you were a younger carbon copy of your father. The rest of the shinobi council all had a look of realization on their faces. Naruto gave them a moment to process that and continued. And seeing as how I'm the last of 2 clans, the restrictions on age and rank no longer apply to me. This caused the council to deliberate for a few minutes, then nod their agreement. It was true after all. Sume Inazuka, leader of the Inazuka clan, Kiba's mother, a beautiful but somewhat wild-looking woman in her 30s, spoke first. We agree you will be made a clan head, however due to your status as the last known heir of 2 clans, the CRA, Clan Restoration Act, will be put into effect on you. Meaning you will have to have at least 10 or more wives by the age of 25. Naruto nodded with a smile for her, which surprisingly made her blush a little before he spoke. I know I did my research and knew that it would most likely be put in place when I took my position as a clan head. Everyone gave nods, but before they could say anything more, Naruto turned to Hiyashi with a serious look on his face. Hiyashi, noticing this, met Naruto's gaze and was startled for a second at the power in Naruto's eyes, although he didn't show it. Hiyashi-sama, I would like to ask for permission to date your daughter Hinata, assuming she is willing with the CRA and all that. Hiyashi's eyes widened in surprise at that, as did the rest of the councils and the Hokages. Then he began to think it over. He is the head of the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans. He would make a fine husband for Hinata even under the CRA, assuming of course he isn't a weakling, and she agrees. After a couple seconds of pondering, Hiashi spoke. If you can prove you can protect her and she agrees, I'll allow it. Naruto nodded with a smile, then turned to Hiruzen. Gigi, can you show him my exam scores from yesterday? Hiruzen nodded, then ruffled through his papers and handed the copy to an aide who promptly gave it to Hiashi. Hiashi took the folder, and as he read it his eyes bulged and he gave a choked gasp and stared in shock at the Naruto's scores. The rest of the council were shocked at the normally stoic Hyuga's reaction. Meanwhile the Hokage had to suppress a snicker at his reaction. After a few seconds Soon spoke up. Out with it, what does it say, Hiashi? Hiashi snapped out of his daze and stared at Naruto for a second before answering. He got an S average on all 4 tests. Choza, the head of the Akamichi clan, spoke up. So that's not unheard of for a genin. Hiashi shook his head in the negative while eyeing Naruto carefully and spoke again. He got an S average on the Jonin scale for all 4 tests and even displayed a cage-level lightning jutsu and 2 Jonin-level kenjutsu, all 3 of which he apparently invented himself. This drew wide-eyed looks of amazement from the Shinobi Council. Before Inoichi, the head of the Yamanaka, spoke. That shouldn't be possible for an academy student. This drew nods of agreement from everybody. Then the Hokage spoke. Kakashi verified it himself with his Sharingan during all 4 tests. The council members were surprised at this, but after a few seconds nodded their agreement that it had to be the truth since Kakashi used his Sharingan to verify it. Naruto chuckled at their reaction, then turned to Hiashi with an expectant look on his face. Hiashi locked eyes with Naruto and nodded. You have my permission to date my daughter as long as she agrees. Naruto smiled with a nod and a mental reminder to find Hinata and tell her as soon as possible. After giving everyone a minute to process everything, Hiruzen spoke. Okay, that is what I called everyone here today for. We will make an announcement to the civilian side of the council tomorrow, and since he is still technically a genin if only in formality. Naruto won't be taking a general seat on the Shinobi Council until he is at least a Tokubetsu Jonin. Everyone nodded at that since the minimum requirement for a general seat on the council was that rank. Meaning that Naruto would only be required to attend important meetings or ones that directly affected him and or his clan until he acquired it. Hiruzen looked everyone over then nodded. If no one has any other issues then this meeting is adjourned. Everyone nodded and started making their way out of the council chambers. Once everyone else was gone, Naruto approached Hiruzen with a smile. Well Gigi, that went better than expected. Hiruzen smiled back and nodded. Yes it did, you even managed to get Hiashi's permission to date his daughter, impressive. Naruto grinned. Yeah, as long as she agrees. I knew he would once he knew my heritage and that I can take care of her. Hiruzen nodded, then Naruto leaned in and spoke in his ear. The walls have eyes, Gigi, and I smell a one-armed rat. Hiruzen widened his eyes, then he calmed down and nodded. So it is Danzo who is sending these spies. I had my suspicions but hoped they were false. I'll have my Anbu look closer. Naruto stepped back and nodded his goodbye to Hiruzen, then focused on Hinata's chakra signature with his ascended senses and disappeared, leaving behind a tinge of black lightning. Hiruzen spluttered when he saw Naruto disappear in what was obviously the Hiraishin, and an improved one no less. He then chuckled for a few seconds before heading back to his office with a smile. You would be proud, Minato. He then frowned in thought. It is going to be one hell of a meeting tomorrow when we announce his new status to the civilian side of the council. In a clearing a little ways from the Hyuga compound, 9 a.m. Naruto appeared with a small tinge of black lightning a little ways away from where he could sense Hinata was training. You're finally going to start a relationship with her after 1,200 years, Naruto-kun, aren't you excited? Kumiko said over the bond. Yeah, I am, but I'm also nervous she'll reject me. Naruto had been harboring feelings for Hinata for 1,200 years from his perspective. He had always liked her as a friend, but when pain attacked the village and she had confessed her love while protecting him, those feelings had blossomed into love, but he never got much of a chance to act before the final battle with Madara and his ascension. So to finally have another chance with her he was excited and extremely nervous. Makes sense, but she won't, Naruto-kun. She loves you as much as me and she will accept this even though she'll have to share you because of the CRA. You won't neglect any of us, so it will be fine. Kumiko replied. Naruto nodded in agreement with that. He would never neglect any of his loved ones. So he made his way into the clearing, then cleared his throat to get her attention. Hinata had been sitting down up against a tree taking a break from her practice and wasn't using her Byakugan when he had appeared, so she jumped at the sound and turned to look at him. When she saw who it was she blushed cutely and spoke. And Naruto-kun, what are you doing here? Naruto chuckled at her cuteness, then gave a gentle smile and moved to sit next to her, making her blush further. I need to tell you a few things about myself, then ask you a question. Hinata nodded and waited to hear what he had to say. First off, my parents were Kushina Uzumaki and the 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze. Hinata's eyes bulged at this information, but she nodded knowing there was more to what he had to say. 12 years ago the Kyuubi was forced to attack our village by someone controlling her. My parents were killed during the attack and my father was forced to seal the Kyuubi in me a newborn. That's why some of the villagers hate me so much. Hinata's eyes widened in realization. That's why they all tried to hurt him, oh Naruto-kun. She moved forward surprising Naruto and embraced him in a gentle hug. Naruto smiled and wrapped his arms around her, then positioned them so she was sitting in his lap with his back up against the tree. Hinata noticed this and blushed furiously at her position. Naruto smiled at her and continued. Today I was made head of the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans, but the CRA was forced into place on me, meaning I need at least 10 wives by the age of 25. Hinata gasped a bit at this. She had learned of the CRA during her training as the Hyuga heir. Naruto looked her in the eyes with a sincere expression. Hinata-chan, I've had a crush on you for a while now, and now that I'm a clan head I got your father's permission to date you if you wanted to. So my question is if you would be my girlfriend to spite Kumiko-chan and having to share me. At his words Hinata's heart skipped a beat and her face was almost cherry red. Naruto-kun likes me, and is asking me to be his girlfriend. Please don't let this be a dream. Hinata only stayed conscious through sheer force of will, then she began to think. Can I share him? Well, I suppose if I like the other girls it wouldn't be so bad, it would be like having sisters, so I guess have my answer then. Hinata smiled a small smile and nodded, then spoke. Why yes Naruto-kun, I would love to be your girlfriend since I've had a crush on you for a while as well, and as long as I like them I wouldn't mind other girls. She blushed more at her own words, then her breath hitched when Naruto tightened his grip and pulled her closer until their noses were touching. When he spoke it made her shiver because she could feel his breath on her face. Thank you Hinata-chan for accepting me, and I promise to always protect you. He then closed the rest of the distance and kissed her. Hinata's eyes fluttered closed and she melted into the kiss. Please Kami, don't let this be a dream. She practically screamed in her own head. Since her eyes were closed Hinata didn't notice the bright red flash that signaled the forming of a family bond. Naruto used his control of the bond to lock her age-changing ability for now. He would form a soul bond with her in the next few years, but she wasn't ready for as it stood, so he would wait until she was. Until then the family bond would protect her, and he was planning to train her along with breaking her out of her shell. After a solid minute the two ended the kiss panting. Hinata was blushing like crazy, but nonetheless she held onto him and shyly snuggled into his chest while still sitting in his lap. Naruto smiled at the action and began stroking her hair gently while holding her close, earning a content sigh from her as Hinata relaxed in his arms before speaking. And Naruto-kun, I feel different and more powerful since that kiss. Naruto looked into her eyes before speaking. Yeah, I used a special jutsu Kumiko taught me to form a bond between us. It doubles your chakra reserves and makes you heal faster, but be careful, it won't heal you from everything. Hinata's eyes widened at the gift Naruto had given her before she smiled and nodded before, to his surprise, leaning in and planting a chaste kiss on his lips. When she pulled away she hid her face in his chest with a blush. Naruto chuckled and went back to stroking her hair, earning another content sigh from her as she relaxed in his arms. This continued for a few minutes as the two enjoyed the cuddling, but then Hinata remembered something he said. Naruto-kun, who is Kumiko? She wasn't mad, just curious. She had agreed to share him after all. Naruto chuckled, he figured she'd ask that. Kumiko is the Kyuubi's actual name. At Hinata's incredulous look he explained about Madara controlling Kumiko and causing her to attack the village and kill one of her best friends, his mother. At the end of the story Hinata had tears in her eyes, and Naruto could tell through the bond Kumiko was beginning to care for Hinata even more after her reaction than she already did after everything she had learned of Hinata through Naruto. That's horrible to have everyone think you're a monster and try to control you. Then have one of them force you to kill your best friend. Naruto nodded, then wiped Hinata's tears away with his thumbs before speaking. Yes it is, but she is amazing and she is the one who helped me all these years. After getting to know her I fell for her and she is going to be one of my wives. He could feel Kumiko sending him her love over the bond as she heard what he said. Hinata nodded in understanding. She wouldn't mind Kumiko being one of Naruto's wives. After everything she had been through she deserved some happiness. After a few more minutes of cuddling Naruto motioned Hinata to get up and they both stood. Once they were standing he leaned in and pecked her on the lips, causing her to blush again. He chuckled and then spoke. How about I help you train? That way you can impress your father and protect yourself better, especially with your new power boost. Naruto was well aware that Hinata would most likely be facing Neji in the Chunin exams in 2 months and wasn't going to let the same thing happen again. Hinata nodded with a small smile before poking her index fingers together and blushing. Place please Naruto-kun, that would be amazing. Naruto nodded and smiled back. For the next 3 hours he helped his new girlfriend train. Around 1 o'clock Naruto called an end to the training. Hinata had shown quite a bit of improvement even over just the 3 hours thanks to the family bond giving her bigger chakra reserves and Naruto's help. Hinata-chan, how about we go get lunch at Ichiraku on me? Hinata nodded and the two headed to the ramen shop. Before long the two arrived and Naruto ordered beef ramen while Hinata ordered vegetable ramen. Naruto, having not had Ichiraku's ramen for 1200 years, was actually crying anime tears as he ate 10 bowls in the time it took Hinata to finish one. How does Naruto-kun eat so much? Hinata didn't know if there was an answer to that question and thought it might have something to do with Kumiko being sealed inside him. After they finished their meal, Naruto paid for it and on their way out he received a knowing grin from Ayame. When they walked out, Naruto reached over and took Hinata's hand, causing her to blush with a small smile. He steered them towards the Hyuga compound, walking her home. Before long they arrived at the gates, luckily without any trouble from any of the villagers besides the nasty looks they sent at Naruto. Naruto turned and kissed Hinata softly on the lips. When he pulled back she had a slight blush but seemed to already be getting somewhat used to the affection. He smiled at her and rubbed her cheek with his hand, causing her to blush even more. I'll see you tomorrow, Hyme, princess, around noon in the same spot, and I'll help you train some more, then we'll hopefully have time for another date. Hinata blushed brightly but nodded her head. I see, can't wait, Naruto-kun. She answered with a small smile, then made her way inside the compound. Naruto watched her go with a smile before disappearing back to his apartment with a tinge of black lightning. Once he was there he quickly packed all his things since he didn't have much, then gave his key to the landlady and thanked her for being nice to him for all those years. She was sad to see him go, but when he told her that his parents had left him a house she hugged him with a smile, wished him luck and let him go. It was around 8 p.m. and he was on his way home with all his belongings sealed in scrolls when he sensed 2 chakra signatures quite a ways outside of the village and immediately recognized both of them. Looks like that bastard Mizuki stole the scroll himself, and Iruka-sensei must have noticed. Knowing Iruka would most likely need help, Naruto disappeared in a tinge of black lightning. When he arrived it was just in time to see Mizuki throw one of his Fuma shuriken at Iruka. Seeing Iruka wouldn't have time to dodge, Naruto blurred in front of him while drawing his Zanpakuto with his right hand. He cut the shuriken cleanly in two with his sword, the two halves falling to the sides harmlessly. Mizuki and Iruka were both stunned by his appearance, and before they could do anything Naruto spoke. Mizuki, return the forbidden scroll and make this easy on yourself. You'll stand trial for your betrayal of Konoha and attempted murder of a fellow Konoha shinobi. Iruka, knowing Naruto's exam scores, knew he could handle Mizuki but was still afraid for Naruto's safety. Mizuki laughed a cold sadistic laugh before speaking. Why, if it isn't the demon brat come to try and stop me, you weakling. Apparently Mizuki hadn't heard of his exam scores. Iruka's eyes widened at that. Mizuki knew it was forbidden by the Hokage. Before Mizuki could continue trying to break Naruto by telling him of the Kyuubi, Naruto began laughing, causing them both to look at him confused. Oh Mizuki, you poor ignorant fool, I've known about Kumiko-chan since I was 7. She is no demon. She was forced to attack the village 12 years ago, and if you look at the records she has never attacked anywhere without either being provoked or controlled. Iruka went wide-eyed at this information while Mizuki gritted his teeth in anger. It doesn't matter, you die here tonight, brat. Orochimaru-sama will reward me handsomely for your head. Mizuki yelled as he launched his other Fuma shuriken at Naruto. Naruto reached out and caught it with his left hand, then snapped it in half like a twig with a flick of his wrist while sheathing his sword on his back. Mizuki and Iruka couldn't believe their eyes, and before he could do anything else Naruto disappeared and reappeared behind Mizuki with a tinge of black lightning. Once he was behind Mizuki he stomped the back of first his left then right legs with his right foot, breaking both of Mizuki's legs like twigs, causing Mizuki to howl in pain and fall to his knees before Naruto knocked him out with a chop to the back of the neck. Naruto then took the forbidden scroll and strapped it to his back before turning to Iruka, who had a stunned look on his face. Iruka-sensei, are you okay? We better take him to the Hokage and report this as well as return the scroll. Iruka snapped out of daze and nodded before speaking. You're right, and thank you Naruto, you saved my life. Naruto nodded with a smile and created 2 Kage Bunshin to carry Mizuki with them to the Hokage mansion. As they were walking Iruka couldn't help but ask. Naruto, was what you said about the Kyuubi being forced to attack Konoha true? And why did you call it Kumiko? Naruto placed a sound suppression seal around them in a bubble while they walked so no one would hear them, and explained about the Kyuubi and how her name was Kumiko and she had a human form which she preferred to her Biju form, and that she had always been attacked for just existing. People just assumed she was evil and attacked her to kill her or for power. Then he explained that a masked Uchiha that claimed to be Madara had forced her to attack the village with his Sharingan, and that she in fact liked the village, and in the process she killed one of her best friends, his mother. He told Iruka how Kumiko was locked in his seal for years, blaming herself, then went on to explain who his parents were and how he was now a clan head and had the CRA placed on him. So after she helped me all these years without me knowing, and then getting to know her while she trained me, we fell for each other and she agreed to be one of my wives even if we might never be able to be a couple in public. Iruka, after hearing the whole story, was shocked and appalled at the way Kumiko was treated, and his hate for the Kyuubi moved to hate for the masked man that claimed to be Madara, the real reason the village was attacked, when he realized Kumiko was just as much a victim as him. Then when he heard how they fell in love, he actually sniffled a little bit, knowing she had watched over Naruto all these years and would now be his wife. Actually made Iruka happy for them both. "I'm so proud of you, Naruto, you've gotten so strong, and I want you to know I'm happy for you and Kumiko now that I know the truth," Iruka said with a smile. Naruto smiled back and spoke. "Thank you, Iruka-sensei, that means a lot to me and Kumiko-chan." They then finally reached the village gates and made their way to the Hokage mansion. Luckily the Hokage was there late doing paperwork. When he learned what Mizuki had done and why, he immediately called an Anbu to take him to INT. He thanked Naruto and Iruka for their help and the return of the scroll, then marked it as a B-rank mission on Naruto's record and paid him for it. Naruto thanked Hiruzen with a smile, and he and Iruka left. Before they went their separate ways after leaving the Hokage mansion, Iruka offered to buy Naruto ramen since he hadn't had the chance to take him out for any yet, like he said he would the day before, and of course since Naruto had saved his life. Naruto, never one to turn down ramen, of course accepted, and the two had a nice meal together before they went their separate ways and headed home. The next 5 days leading up to team placements was a dream come true for Naruto. After Hiruzen had revealed his true heritage along with his clan head status and had sufficiently berated the civilian council for their outburst when he told them it was made public knowledge. Once they learned who he was, the villagers looked at Naruto in a whole new light. Those who had hated and attempted to beat him now looked away in shame, and most of the village now treated him appropriately. During those 5 days he continued training Hinata and managed to go on a date with her every day. He kept it random, taking her to see various sights around the village and different restaurants that he could now afford thanks to his inheritance. Hinata had already come quite a ways from the shy girl she was a week ago. She was still quiet and shy around most people, but when they were alone she would smile and giggle, which would cause Naruto's heart to flutter. He promised himself that he would see that smile and hear her laugh for the rest of eternity. During one of their dates they had run across Kiba, who smiled at their clasped hands, causing Hinata to blush. He congratulated them on their new relationship along with Naruto on his new status as a clan head and talked with them for a bit before going on his way, stating he was doing errands for his mother while mumbling about scary women, causing Naruto to laugh. During those 5 days when he would get home, Naruto used time dilation fields on the whole Namikaze compound, set to give him a week in the field. While only a few minutes passed outside the compound, he used this time to further perfect various techniques and learning and inventing new ones. He may well be an ascended being, but he wasn't omnipresent or omnipotent and was determined to keep getting stronger so he would always be able to protect his loved ones. Day of the team placements. It was early in the morning and everyone was excited to find out what teams they would be on. Naruto was wearing his now standard outfit he had worn during the exams, complete with his Zanpakuto, and was wondering if the team placements would be the same or different. Hinata was hoping to be on her boyfriend's team or Kiba's team so she would have a friend on her team. While some of the other students were giving Naruto curious looks after finding out who he was earlier in the week, even Sasuke seemed somewhat curious. Before long Iruka made his way to the front of the class and cleared his throat, making the new shinobi quiet down. "Everyone here is now a proud shinobi of Konoha. I wish you all the best and hope you do our village proud." He gave them a second to process the seriousness of his words before he continued. "I will now announce your team placements along with your Jonin senseis. Same team placements as canon for everyone. I wanted to keep them the same so Naruto could proceed with his plan to help Sasuke onto a better path and hopefully save him from being corrupted. Team 7. Jonin Sensei, Kakashi Hatake. Members are Sakura Haruno, Sasuke Uchiha, and Naruto Uzumaki. While Naruto was the clan head of the Namikaze and Uzumaki clans, he had chosen to keep his mother's last name so he didn't have to change it. Sakura, who had cheered at being placed on the same team as Sasuke, simply gave Naruto a curious look after the exams. She really didn't know what to think of him anymore, and he had apparently just been pretending to have a crush on her, which kind of pissed her off, but she would hold off on her judgment until she got to know the real him. Sasuke surprisingly turned and gave Naruto a nod of respect. After he had learned who Naruto was and seen firsthand what he was capable of during the exam, Sasuke had come to somewhat respect Naruto. Besides, deception was the shinobi's greatest tool and Naruto had used it splendidly, so Sasuke didn't mind having Naruto as a teammate. Naruto returned Sasuke's nod, then looked beside him to his left and noticed Hinata looked somewhat depressed that she wasn't on Naruto's team. He smiled at her cute pouting expression and leaned in and pecked her cheek, causing her to blush before he spoke in her ear. "It's okay, Hinata-chan, I'll still help you train whenever we can and we'll still have plenty of dates, that's a promise, and I never break my promises. Besides, you have the necklace I gave you, and if you ever need my help just put some chakra into it and I'll be there in a flash." During the 5 days he had been training and dating her, he had revealed his mastery of the Hiraishin, much to her shock and awe. He had gifted her with a necklace that had the seal for the Hiraishin on it as an extra precaution. Because of the family bond, he gave her no suppression seal or anything for that matter could block him from flashing to her side in an instant, but he wasn't going to take any chances, so he gifted her the necklace just in case. Hinata smiled back and nodded before leaning in and pecking him on the cheek as well, causing her to blush even more. Naruto and Kiba, who as usual was to Hinata's left, chuckled at her, although Kiba was curious about what they said about her necklace but figured it was just Naruto protecting Hinata, and he was happy about that and figured Hinata would explain if it was important. Iruka continued down the list. Team 8. Jonin Sensei, Kurenai Yuhi. Members are Shino Aburame, Hinata Hyuga and Akiba Inuzuka. I'll skip the rest since they're the same as canon. Kiba smiled when he heard this and Akamaru gave a happy yip from his spot on Kiba's head. Hinata smiled as well because she had her friend Kiba on her team and wouldn't be put on a team with nothing but strangers. The two turned and gave Shino a nod, who was a couple seats away, which he returned as impassively as usual. After Iruka was done, all the Jonin senseis entered the classroom one by one and retrieved their teams to go off and get to know each other, all except of course Kakashi, who was nowhere to be seen. As she was leaving with her team, Naruto gave Hinata a hug and kiss on the cheek and told her he'd see her later, causing Kurenai to smile at the cute young couple. Hinata sure is lucky to have Naruto, she thought to herself as they left. Once everyone was gone, Naruto threw his feet up on his desk and leaned back in his chair while pulling some advanced Fuinjutsu, sealing jutsu, notes from a storage seal he had on him to pass the time before Kakashi arrived. After about 2 hours, Sakura groaned and spoke. What could be taking her sensei so long? Sasuke, who had been deep in thought, shook his head and replied. Who knows, he is a Jonin, so it could be anything. Sakura smiled at him and replied. You're right, Sasuke-kun. Sasuke ignored her fangirl ways and went back to his thoughts, causing Sakura to pout at him not talking to her further. Naruto silently chuckled at their antics and continued reading his notes. About 30 minutes later, the door to the classroom opened and in walked Kakashi. Sakura huffed at him before speaking. You're late, sensei. Sasuke nodded his agreement with her and Naruto chuckled dryly at his old sensei's tardiness habit before nodding his agreement as well. Kakashi sheepishly rubbed the back of his head with a small chuckle while speaking. Yeah, sorry about that, but something came up. Anyways, meet me on the roof for a team meeting and introductions, he said before swirling away to the roof in a leaf shunshin. The three of them stood and quickly made their way to the roof for the meeting. They arrived and found seats on the steps. Once they were seated, Kakashi began. Okay, now for introductions, I'll go first so you guys have an idea of what to do. My name is Kakashi Hatake. I don't really feel like telling you my likes and dislikes. As for my dreams for the future, I've never really thought about it. Okay, now your turns. The three sweat dropped. He had really only told them his name. Naruto chuckled in his own head. This was all so nostalgic for him going through it again. Naruto decided he'd go first. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I was recently made head of my parents' 2 clans. My likes are my girlfriend Hinata, ramen, and training to get stronger. My dislikes are those who abandon or betray their friends and family, along with anybody who tries to hurt those I care about. My dream for the future is to be Hokage and have a big loving family along with rebuilding my clan. Kakashi nodded at him while Sasuke and Sakura gave him contemplative looks while considering his words. Kakashi turned to Sakura. You're next. Sakura nodded and thought for a second before speaking. My name is Sakura Haruno. My likes are. Here she glanced at Sasuke before continuing. And getting noticed by a certain someone. Here she glanced at Sasuke again. My dislikes are. Here she paused before seeing his exam scores and new attitude. She would have answered Naruto. I have to agree with Naruto's dislikes. After hearing what he said, she agreed with him. My dream for the future is to be a great kunoichi and to get married and have a family. Her cheeks colored a bit at the last part. Kakashi nodded, then motioned Sasuke to finish. Sasuke took a second to think as well. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I'm the heir to the Uchiha clan. My likes are training and getting stronger. My dislikes are many, but I also have to agree with Naruto. My dream for the future is to avenge my clan and rebuild it. Kakashi nodded his understanding, then spoke. Okay, now that is over, you are to meet me at the 3rd training grounds tomorrow morning for a survival test to see if you're actually worthy of becoming genin, and if you fail you'll be sent back to the academy. Sasuke and Sakura went wide-eyed at this while Naruto remained impassive. Then Kakashi continued. That's all dismissed. Oh, and don't eat breakfast tomorrow, you'll just end up puking. With that he vanished in a leaf shunshin. Naruto then stood and turned to Sasuke and Sakura. Well, I'll see you guys tomorrow for the test, later. He then vanished in his fire and lightning shunshin to their shock. After recovering they both went their separate ways, determined not to fail tomorrow's test. The next day, 6 a.m., the 3rd training ground. Sasuke and Sakura arrived at the same time and Naruto and Kakashi were nowhere in sight, so they sat down under a tree to wait. A few minutes later Naruto arrived via his shunshin and walked over and sat beside them with a full stomach knowing Kakashi would be late. After a few minutes he turned to them and spoke. So I'm pretty sure the point of this test is actually teamwork, not survival. He'll probably make some stuff up to try and divide us or make us argue. So I suggest that while we wait for him we work out a plan to pass the test together. Sakura and Sasuke thought it over and both nodded. They were supposed to be a team after all, so what Naruto said made sense. So while they were waiting they came up with a plan and worked out some signals, but since only Naruto knew what the test would be and couldn't tell them, they could only work out a basic plan and signal system. At about 9 AM Kakashi finally showed up, causing Sakura to huff before she spoke. "You're late again, sensei." Kakashi chuckled sheepishly at her. "Yeah, sorry, but a black cat crossed my path so I took the long way around." They shrugged off his excuse and all three stood to get ready for the test. After a few seconds Kakashi began by pulling out 2 bells. "Okay, the test will be that you each have until noon to take one of these bells from me. You'll have to come at me with intent to kill to get them. Those who don't get one fail the test and don't get lunch." He motioned to 3 nearby posts and continued. "You'll be tied to those posts and I'll eat my lunch in front of you." Sakura pointed out the obvious. "But sensei, there are only 2 bells." Kakashi nodded and replied, "Yes, no matter what, one of you will be sent back to the academy. Of course all 3 of you could fail and be sent back." He let that sink in, then placed a timer on the middle post set to noon and turned back to them. "Begin." At this they all scattered but regrouped a ways away to plan. When they regrouped Sasuke spoke first. "You were right Naruto, this test is designed to divide us and your scores aside 3 genin wouldn't have a chance to get those bells from a jonin, so this is about teamwork." Sakura nodded in agreement, so the 3 of them began to plan. Meanwhile Kakashi was standing in the clearing waiting on their first move. He was completely on guard, having seen Naruto's exam in person, then his display against the spy in the Hokage's office. He wasn't taking any chances. "I can't let my guard down against him, he is basically a green jonin. I wonder if he figured out the point of this test. He didn't seem too bothered by anything I said. Oh well, I'll have to wait and see how they all do." After thinking about it the 3 of them decided they would all attack together and Naruto, being the strongest, would fight him head on while Sakura and Sasuke distracted him so Naruto could take the bells with a clone. With their plan in mind the 3 of them moved in on Kakashi. Naruto blurred towards him and led with a strong right kick that reminded Kakashi of Guy's dynamic entry. Kakashi sidestepped the kick, but before he could counter he had to dodge a barrage of shuriken from Sasuke and Sakura. Not giving Kakashi any time to formulate a plan, Naruto blurred towards Kakashi again at high jonin speeds, causing Kakashi's eyes to widen, and he threw a hard straight right punch that Kakashi barely ducked under. The resulting shockwave of the punch was massive and uprooted some trees, causing Sasuke and Sakura's jaws to drop at the power behind it. Kakashi was so stunned he didn't notice a clone Naruto had created earlier that had snuck up behind him and swiped both bells from his belt. The clone them shunshined beside Naruto and gave him the bells. Kakashi jumped back from Naruto to gain some distance and recover from his shock. "That punch reminded me of Tsunade-sama. Just what is this kid? He is already jonin level and he has monstrous strength and speed that reminds me of his father." He was brought out of his thoughts when he saw the clone appear beside Naruto and give him both bells. He landed a few feet away and stared at Naruto in amazement before checking his belt, and sure enough they were gone. Naruto chuckled at Kakashi's expression, then turned to Sasuke and Sakura, who were both still stunned by his display of strength, and spoke. "Sasuke, Sakura, catch," as he threw them both a bell with a grin. His voice snapped them out of their shock and they both caught a bell each. Sakura was the first to speak. "Thank you, Naruto." While Sasuke nodded his thanks with a small smile, surprising Naruto and Sakura. Naruto shook off his surprise and turned back to Kakashi, who was still too stunned to speak, and spoke with a grin and explained. "After I went home yesterday I thought it out and figured this was actually a test of teamwork, so this morning when we all met up I told Sasuke and Sakura my suspicions and they agreed, so we worked out a basic plan. Then when you told us there were only 2 bells we realized you were trying to divide us, so when the test began we regrouped and agreed that it was a test of teamwork. Since my scores aside no genin could be expected to get those bells off a jonin by themselves. So we came up with the plan of me getting the bells with a clone while fighting you head on and having Sasuke and Sakura provide a distraction to help me. So do we pass, Kakashi sensei?" It took him a minute to contemplate that, but after he thought about he gave them an eye smile and spoke. "Brilliant, you 3, especially you Naruto. In the shinobi world those who abandon the mission are trash, but those who abandon their teammates and friends are lower than trash." He gave them all a second to let those words sink in, then said. "Congratulations, you all pass." Naruto smiled with a nod while Sakura jumped for joy and Sasuke nodded with a small smile as well. 2 weeks later. It had been a busy 2 weeks for Naruto and his team. They had been training and doing D-rank missions almost every day and had started to really come together as an excellent team. During training Naruto would help them with tips and push them to do better. They had even learned tree walking, which Naruto already knew and helped them with. Surprisingly, due to his attitude of not looking down on them or acting better than despite his obvious skill level, Sakura and Sasuke took well to Naruto's help and even thanked him for it. Naruto had become the unofficial second in command of Team 7 right under Kakashi during those 2 weeks of training and missions. During those 2 weeks the three became fairly fast friends, and with some prodding from Naruto, Sasuke had come out of his brooding ways somewhat and loosened up a bit. Sakura had also started coming out of her fangirl tendencies and began training hard with the rest of her team. When he wasn't with his team on missions or training, Naruto would help train and go out on dates with Hinata whenever they both had the time. Along with studying more jutsu when he went home and spending wonderful time with Kumiko, exploring each other, every night in his mindscape. He had also met the Hokage's grandson Konohamaru when he busted into the Hokage's office one day when Naruto was there. He had become friends with Konohamaru and played ninja with him and his friends whenever he had the time. Hinata and Kiba had even joined in one day. Currently they were in the mission assignment room waiting on the Hokage to assign them a new mission, but before he could, Naruto stepped forward. "Gigi, we're ready for something harder, we can handle it." Hiruzen, knowing the truth about Naruto, looked over the rest of his team and received firm nods from all of them, so he nodded. "Okay Naruto, I'll give you and your team a C rank escort mission to the Land of Waves." He then motioned an aide to bring in the client. Tsunade, a bridge builder from the Land of Waves, walked into the room. He was an average-looking older man with gray hair, a beard and glasses, who stood about 5 feet 8 inches and was a little overweight. He was wearing a dark versus neck sleeveless shirt and dark shorts with sandals and a straw hat as well as a backpack. "This is what I get a Jonin and a couple weak kids." He spoke while chugging sake from a bottle. Naruto ignored him, having gone through this last time, while Sasuke and Sakura had annoyed expressions on their faces. Before the situation got out of hand, Kakashi stepped forward and spoke. "I assure you that my team is capable enough to get you home safely." Tsunade scoffed and slurred a bit. "We'll see." He then introduced himself and explained that he hired them to escort him home so he could finish a bridge and guard him on the way there from bandits, etc. All in all, a totally normal C-rank mission. After the explanation, Kakashi nodded and turned to his team. "Okay, we'll meet at the village gates in an hour, pack for a week-long trip." They all nodded and split up to go pack. Naruto had his gear packed in 10 minutes and went and said goodbye to Hinata, who, as luck would have it, was home at the time. He explained that he would be gone for a week and that he would see her when he got back. He kissed her firmly on the lips before he left, causing her to blush and nod her goodbye while telling him to be careful. An hour later they all met up at the gates, and after Kakashi checked their supplies they moved out.